1990 was quite the interesting year for professional wrestling. New Japan Pro Wrestling and All Japan Pro Wrestling were on absolute fire. FMW was rising up in the ranks and gaining a lot of love in the dirt sheets and whatever newsletter readers were basically in the goddamn world. From the US to Japan and all over the goddamn world, basically professional wrestling, far and wide, was certainly at an interesting point. You had the WWF that was trying to make the Ultimate Warrior their banner guy, their main event guy, but they didn't prepare enough heels for him to face off against. Ted DiBiase, Rick Rude, that was pretty much it right there. They really didn't give him much else to work with. And then on the flip side, you had Jim Herd pulverizing WCW and pounding it into the goddamn dirt, so he didn't know what the fuck he was doing. Take Capital Combat 1990, for example. Please, take it and put it in the goddamn meat grinder, like they did to Michael Myers at the end of Halloween Ends. We basically got to see the return of RoboCop. Jim Herd, I fucking hate you. I fucking despise the fact you exist. And if anybody related to Jim Herd happens to be watching this, fuck you for existing. You don't deserve to exist either. That being said, Jim Herd would then do this event. That was capped off by a very, very, very super out of shape and washed up and just absolutely gassed JYD, who at one time was one of the biggest draws in professional wrestling. For Mid-South Wrestling, he was a big part of the WWF, at least for a couple of years. And now he was basically sucking wind during his intro, facing off against Nature Boy Ric Flair, who had his own goddamn issues that have since seen the light of day. And then he's shown a bright spotlight on there, like a tanning bed light, frying his reputation, like those girls at the end, or rather in the middle of Final Destination 3, frying him like at the end of Saint Maud. The bottom line is that WCW is really having issues. So you had that main event, capping off this event that wasn't particularly all that great outside of a couple matches. And boy, oh boy, every heel and every face had already wrestled on the goddamn card. And Sting, who was going to go on to Great American Bash 1990 and be crowned the WCW Heavyweight Champion, NWA WCW Heavyweight Champion, whatever. And then he was going to have the Black Scorpion angle. Because once again, Jim Herd is a fucking idiot. Didn't know anything about wrestling. I fucking hate Jim Herd. So let's get to it. I'm John Rentham with a retro view of NWA WCW Clash of the Champions 11 Coastal Crush. It's tubular. Let's get a case of Coastal Crush and go out surfing in our, silly little neon things or skateboard. Ooh, like the dynamic dudes. God, I sound so fucking old saying that. By the way, Coastal Crush really does sound like something you would find at a store, but not even a popular store chain. Not a Kroger, a Cars, a Costco, a Safeway, Fred Meyer's, whatever you have. Not a Dollar General, not a Dollar Tree, like a Red Apple. Anybody that lives in the state, you know what the fuck a Red Apple is. Are there Red Apples in any other goddamn state? I mean the stores. I don't mean actual red apples. So yeah, Hurricane Hugo prevented them from actually being in Charleston, South Carolina in 1989. Cornette's talked about that. I'm going to make references to Jim Cornette's podcast during the show, because he talked about his time in WCW, until him and Sweet Stan Lane left in the latter part of 1990. So this was on June 13th, 1990. And McAllister Fieldhouse, they had around 4,100 people. The building holds around 6,000. So considering the stage and considering the setup, not all that bad. But a little bit more history. Flair had quit the booking committee right around Wrestle War 1990, was not going to drop the title to Lex Luger, and was ready to quit the company altogether. Like, he was he had it with Jim Herd. Jim Herd promised him full control, was not willing to let Flair just be the booker, had to have his finger in every pie, and the ding-dongs and other stuff and everything, and the Hunchbacks thing, which I will admit is a funny Ole Anderson story. Oh, we can't pin him? Okay. Jim, I'll slap a rest hold, or I'll slap an armbar on him, or I'll slap a sleeper hold on him. I just beat your unbeatable tag team. Oh, God damn it, Ole, you knew what I meant. But, yeah, you got that stuff going on. You got talent turnover being severe. You have good talent on this, both veteran and up and coming, but just there's no direction. Like, there were some good matches on the show. But realistically, it was such a bad show, overall. It started okay, and then it really went downhill. And the Clash of Champions have always been about having shorter matches, featuring people But yeah, it had its issues. Let's talk about that. Hurricane Hugo clips with water graphics, so timely. That's good. Good sensitivity there. Shivani welcomes us with his very coiffed hair, or it's coiffed, whatever. JR and Bob Caudle call the action. Lex Luger will be taking fan phone calls. They, by the way, spelled Luger Lugar. Yeah, I felt like taking a Luger. A Luger slug probably would have been less painful than watching this show. The floor was shaking from the stomping, like early on while the announcers were talking about the cards. So the crowd was amped up for this. And don't get me wrong, the crowd was fairly loud for a portion of this show. Gary Michael Capetta, who really is a terrific ring announcer. I mean, I know he hasn't been doing it for like full time for a while, but he's a great follow on social media. He just seems like an overall good guy. He's worked in a lot of territories. I mean, just a lot of history, a lot of stories that he can tell. But the Wild-Eyed Southern Boys, Steve Armstrong and Tracy Smothers, took on the Fabulous Freebirds, the fake birds, as it were. Michael Hayes, who was a Freebird, and Jimmy Jam Garvin, who thought that he should get on all kinds of steroids and be some kind of badass, even though he worked better as a goddamn heel. And you could tell he was on the goddamn gas. It just wasn't helping him. The heels jumpstart. The Southern Boys gimmick hasn't really aged all that well, to be perfectly honest. I don't really even think it was all that great to begin with. But why did Michael Hayes have eyeliner? Look, it was High Flyers versus Vets. This wasn't awful. Garvin did not fit here. He did not fit at all. He never fit as one of the Freebirds. We got a headbutt to Garvin, diving headbutt, and then Smothers covered 1, 2, 3. Not a bad opener. It was about 7.5 minutes. It was what it was. It served its purpose. It started the show hot. And then we got Tommy Rich, the former NWA World Heavyweight Champion of like 5 days, but he still won it, against Bam Bam Bigelow, who didn't know who he was at this point. He had been in the WWF. I believe he was making tours of Japan. And bless Bam Bam. I mean, he has personal issues that pretty much took him out of wrestling like full time. Probably sooner than he could have, because he also didn't take care of himself, but still. He had Sir Oliver Humperdinck. Humperdinck, I barely know her. That didn't necessarily work. What was 1990? Not good. It was not good, like this match. Rich did some arm ringers. Bam Bam did a couple things and would eventually throttle and choke him. And because he didn't break on the 5 count, that caused a DQ. And then he kept going, doing this kind of stuff. And not good. Not good at all. Bash 1990 plug into a video package with Vader from Japan. He is going to make his debut. I believe he beat Tom Zenk. That's kind of fitting for Tom Zenk, because that's really what he should have been doing at that point, is jobbing. Gary Michael Capetta interviews Elegante and speaks fairly good Spanish. I mean, Bear and I could. Bear and I did in fucking Spanish in high school. I really didn't learn shit there in high school. But that being said, it was what it was. Elegante, a.k.a. Giant Gonzalez, apparently a really nice guy, never belonged in wrestling. He just couldn't get it. He just, blessed the guy, just couldn't get it. Looked great standing there, and that was it. Captain Mike Rotunda, who apparently is dealing with some health issues, may he get through them, because he's had a tough go, losing one of his sons. Very, very tough. But yeah, after being the varsity club, Mike Rotunda, they made him a boat captain. Why? Fuck Jim Herd. I don't know. I mean, fuck Jim Herd, but I don't know. Tom Zenk was his partner, because they got Pillman away from Zenk. More on that here in a minute. Against the Samoan SWAT team, Samu and Fatu. Nerve hold city. We had a nerve hold a few times during this whole thing. We got a switcheroo where Rotunda got a quick roll up. 1, 2, 3. Not all that much to talk about here, but it's interesting to see that Rotunda would go on to be IRS. Zenk would continue to be him. Fatu would eventually come over. Samu and Fatu would come over and be the head shrinkers. And then Fatu would go on to be Rikishi. And would also go on to have something to do with Knox Pro Wrestling. That is in a whole lot of water, or in hot water and scalding water, because, oh boy, because they just couldn't take care of that goddamn criminal. And that's what he was. And also anybody involved in that, except the guy that made the save and everything, He deserves all the... And Stu. I mean, I hope Stu recovers, but damn. That's just terrible. That had nothing to do with this. I just felt like shouting that. And then me, Mark Callis, with Paul E. Dangerously against Brian Pillman. It's a real shame that me, Mark Callis, and Paul E. never got to interact, except with this little bit here. It's real shame. Real shame. Even, being in a bigger company and everything a number of years later on the grandest stage of them all, I never got a chance to interact. If you don't fucking get the sarcasm, by the way, I'm not hitting you over the head enough, but obviously you know who they are, you know what they did. There was a sleeper hold applied in this. Pillman would hit some chops, hit a nice couple drop kicks. But eventually, instead of the hard punch, because I think they got weebled and they fobbled and they won't fall down, we got a stun gun. And not the actual stun gun being used, but, drop on the ropes. There we are. So, Mark Callis gets the victory. Shivani talks to Sting, who yells a bit and walks off. Rock and Roll Express, Ricky and Robert took on Jim Cornette's Midnight Express. Beautiful Bobby and Sweet Stan. Bobby Eaton being the only one that has passed on from this. Very sad. Very, very sad. I mean, it really is. I mean, it's just a damn shame. It was a U.S. Tag Title match. This is just before the Midnight Express would lose the U.S. Tag Titles to the Steiner brothers, but it was short. It was it was 12 minutes, so I'm not expecting like a 20-minute epic, but they had something at Wrestle War 90 that was a lot better, it was a lot longer, and these four were always so good. Stan's unique offense with the karate stuff and everything, and Bobby just being great, and Ricky doing great at selling, also being very agile. Robert, just being able to keep his eye on two people at once. And great dodging and counters and everything. There was a nice double pin for two. We got a melee. We got a double team move, but just for two. And then Stan ends up shoving the referee. And even though it seems like the Rock and Roll Express are going to get the victory, no, we don't quite get the bell being rung because I guess the timekeeper was busy getting a nice little handy underneath the table and got confused or something. And the bell eventually rang, so the Midnight Express keep their U.S. tag titles. Rock and Roll Express get the victory via DQ. Robert, unfortunately, would suffer a knee injury sometime after this. I want to say it was sometime a year later this year, early in 91. And that would actually make Richard Morton part of the York Foundation. Lane and Cornette would take off after Halloween Havoc 1990. Eaton would stay employed, gainfully employed because everybody loved him, would always go to bat for him. He'd get healthy checks and healthy contracts until 2000 when he got released. But that's pretty much it right there. I mean, there really isn't... It then goes downhill significantly for the next few matches. Barry Windham against Doug Furnas. And Doug Furnas is a beast and showed off that beastly power. And Barry was still good here, but was starting on the downhill slide. There was a nice snap slam by Doug, and then a belly to back with the feet on the ropes, and Barry got the victory. Not bad. Served its purpose. Barry, member of the Four Horsemen, keeping his momentum going until he would leave and then become the Widowmaker in WWF for absolutely no reason. I think he became the Widowmaker. Did he become the Widowmaker here, or was that 89? I'm genuinely trying to remember, because I know that he bopped around and everything. Maybe I'm confusing the timelines, because I know he was in WCW in let's see, I think it was around Halloween Havoc in 91 and stuff like that, if I remember right. And he got his hand busted up, and then he would come back teaming up with Pillman. They would actually have some pretty good matches. There was actually a really good match at Starrcade 92. Barry always popped around a lot. But anyway, Sid is in a suit with a Western background yelling incoherently, as Sid is known to do. The Western background stuff and the Old West, the green screen stuff was not great. And then we had Lex Luger versus Sid with Ole for the U.S. title, and literally, Luger attacked Ole. Ole was still in the corner. Sid went to check on Ole. Luger hit him with a clothesline and pinned Sid, and that was 26 seconds. That was your match. Sid would go on by the following year, I believe at Great American Bash 91, he would face off in the against Elegante, I believe at the, if I remember right, it was a stretcher match. And then he would go to the WWF, would be the referee. Sid Justice. Man, Sid was also another one to bounce around way too much. And Luger, Luger worked better as a heel and didn't turn heel until about a year after this. And it's actually kind of funny, if I remember right, he turned heel at the Clash a year before this. Like, right after Wrestle War 89. So anyway, we have the tag team of Doom. We have Ron Simmons, later Farouk, and later Damn. Teaming with Butch Reed in Butch Reed's last full-time run against Steiner Brothers, Rick and Scott. NWA tag title match, Teddy Long, or Theodore R. Long, who got his last name just thinking about tag team matches. We had Power for Power here. Butch, he was just on his last legs because he'd had a hard style, the Mid-South schedule and other stuff and everything, and also his cocaine stuff and whatever. He unfortunately would go away from like full-time competition and passed away in the last couple years. But the Steiners were super over here. Rick just at one point throwing Ron Simmons with no effort. Scary. Fucking scary. And later, after Rick got beat up for a while, Scott got the tag. Then we got an international object being used because Ted Turner hated the word foreign. And we got a double pin, but Doom got the victory. So yeah, that was a match. This sounded a lot better probably than I made it play out because it wasn't interminable, but it wasn't the best. They had a better pay-per-view match before where Doom had won the tag team titles from them. JYD was cutting a promo, and God, he did not have it. Who did have it was Paul Orndorff facing off against TV champion Arn Anderson. Arn Anderson, who had the title, but the title wasn't on the line. Paul was still good, but the atrophy was starting to set in. The pinched nerve and the issues with his arm. And good technical wrestling as you would expect. Both these guys very smooth. Scary how Arn would actually be out of the ring full time within like 7 years of this. I mean, just 7 years and change, he would actually give his retirement speech and would never wrestle again. At one point, he got his tights pulled down. We got the exposed enforcer, the exposed double A. And then later, Arn got a roll-up, but nope, that got reversed. Roll-up, 1, 2, 3. And there we are. So, Horseman not actually having the best night here. Because, I mean, Barry got the victory, but it was over Doug Furnace, who really didn't mean anything in WCW. Sid lost in 26 seconds. Arn lost in a competitive match here. 4 Horsemen promo where, yeah, they certainly said stuff, and Ole just pretended Shivani was black so he could insult him. And JYD got a big band entrance, and that band was almost as big as he was. I'm sorry to harp on it. I'm not saying that I'm in great shape, and I'm not saying a lot of fans aren't in great shape, but JYD kind of did it to himself at this point. NWA title match, and it was one of the saddest sights you will ever see. He couldn't get on the ropes. He could barely move. They were trying to hype him up, the crowd was, but this was sad. At one point, there was a chair shot. JYD either no-sold it or had no idea what the fuck happened. I'm going with the latter. And Ole ends up causing a DQ. And JYD would make sporadic appearances in WCW after this, but it would never go anywhere. And he would be making indie appearances and just doing stuff and working regular jobs. Nothing wrong with working a regular job, but it's just, the fact is he never took care of himself. And I mean, he was dead by 98, like the summer of 98 or something like that. But anyway, yeah, that was pretty much it right there. That was 6.5 minutes, and it felt longer, and Flair could only do so much. A melee, the Horsemen and the Faces run in. Sting's also there. Rocky King was also there. I know the name. That's about all I can remember. And then Sting's fired up and wants the match signed for Great American Bash. And they run back out and do a big melee thing again. Okay, God, why'd you do that? Jesus Christ. Yeah, that was certainly a show. That was the Clash of Champions Coastal Crush. Yeah, more snark, more fun, and Probably more mean jokes than I should have made, but whatever. It's fine. Look, I recognize all events don't age the same. There are plenty of issues with some of these, but goddamn, some of these clashes, some of them were great, and some of them were this. That's down to Jim Herd being a fucking idiot. Agree, disagree, what I said, like, share, subscribe, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Redland until we hopefully visit another WCW event that's better than this. Again, happy trails to you.